What's up, Lou?
How you doing, Johnny? Good to talk to you, man.
It's great to talk to you, brother. Welcome on the show, man.
Nice shirt.
You're a Rush fan?
How you got to be a Rush fan. I mean, I'm not a huge Rush fan, but you got to be a Rush fan.
Absolutely, man. We lost one of the greatest, Neil Peart, this year to ever do
Neil
it.
Peart is one of the greatest of all time.
Hands down, man. John Bottom up there, obviously, in the rock and roll genre. Keith Moon. Do you like music, Lou?
I'm a huge music fan. Like I love music. Yeah. I mean, everything from hip hop to jazz to reggae. I love music. My grandfather was an opera singer. My maternal grandfather was an opera singer, and music was always around me. Opera, Sinatra, jazz. Even growing up, my aunt turned me on to the Beatles. I can say that I saw Jimi Hendrix in concert because I saw Jimi Hendrix open for the Monkees at Forest Hills Tennis Stadium when I was a kid. My aunt took me to see the Monkees, and Jimi Hendrix got booed off the stage. But now I tell people now it's very cool. Hey, I saw Jimi Hendrix.
Wow, man. Of course. I mean, to see some of the legends I've seen Rush about, I don't know, 30, 40 times in my life. And,
well, I've seen I stopped seeing the Grateful Dead. I mean, I went to a couple of Dead shows or Dead and Company shows in recent years, but I really stopped seeing the Grateful Dead with frequency after Jerry died. But I had seen the Dead 99 times, and I had tickets for my 100th show when Jerry Garcia died. I've seen, I don't know, Springsteen something like 80 times. I've seen the Rolling Stones over 50 times. I used to, when I was a kid, I scalped tickets before it was criminal, when it was like a parking ticket. Actually, when you were my age, I was scalping at 15, 16, 17. I mean, it was pretty much permissible. It was like a wink and a whatever. It's a completely different thing now. But when I was a kid, I would get like my high school classmates from Regis High School to wait online at Madison Square Garden with wristbands. My buddy Al Rocco was the mastermind of the whole plan, and we'd accumulate large numbers of good seats to concerts, and it was my first job.
It's incredible. And speaking about going to see events, I mean, I've seen a lot of concert events. I've seen a lot of your shows that you promoted, obviously over the past couple of years as a promoter, but the Boxing After Dark shows on HBO back in the day, I mean, dude, you gave birth to the greatest fight show, in my opinion, at least in my generation. I'm 42 years old. I grew up watching and became a boxing fan because of Boxing After Dark, which was an incredible conception that you put together. Can you tell me how that formulated and how you guys got so many great fights?
It's interesting because it relates directly to a lot of the problems I see with boxing today. We were the 800-pound gorilla of boxing TV at HBO during the 90s, particularly. And we had a lot of superstars fighting live or on pay-per-view. But pay-per-view was a rarity. I mean, the pay-per-view was really huge fights. I mean, we did loads of fights that did well over 1 million buys, and we did loads of fights that did over 500,000 buys. And pay-per-view was for the biggest level of fight, but you would see heavyweight championship fights on HBO. You would see Oscar De La Hoya on HBO and Lennox Lewis, Riddick Bowe, Evander Holyfield, Pernell Whitaker. You saw the best in boxing in the biggest matchups on HBO. And even then, I felt it was star-driven to the point that occasionally you didn't get as competitive a product as you necessarily might want, because you have to keep stars happy. If you have a pay-per-view on the horizon, it's not unusual to have a fight right before it that's not particularly high risk, etc. And the lower weight classes weren't being adequately represented. Young heavyweights weren't being given an opportunity to fight each other to see if they could move up the rung. And there were all these opportunities I saw. We broke Marco Antonio Barrera on Boxing After Dark. We broke Morales on Boxing After Dark. Kennedy McKinney, Junior Jones, Orlando Canizales. We had Costa Zoo, we had Costa lose to Verno Phillips. We had upsets almost every show and fight of the year candidates every show because there were hungry fighters looking for an opportunity who were willing to fight one another. And now we have platforms that are exclusive to one promoter, and 90% of the fights are shit and are non-competitive. And then for the big, you got to go into your pocket and pay $75 for the biggest one, and maybe once a year you'll get a Lomachenko and Teofimo. That's truly a top-notch competitive fight on some form of regular TV. You know,
that was a great fight. Yeah, that was a fun fight to watch. Absolutely.
Look, it was a great event. The fight, frankly, was a little bit disappointing because of Loma's performance, not because of Teofimo. Teofimo was great, but look, it was still a good show and a good event. You know, I mean, I don't think Loma had his best night, but guess what? That's what happens in boxing. But I thought it was, thank God we had that one big event so far during this pandemic that was on free TV. But there have been too many bad boxing shows lately. Like,
I agree. You know, we're starting to see the better fighters starting to fight. You know, real quick, back to Boxing After Dark, which was an amazing program on HBO.
I'd like to bring that show back. I've been pitching, trying to bring back that concept because it would work again now. There's so many hungry fighters. There were so many fighters who were top-notch, world-class fighters shouldn't have to fight for way less money because networks and streaming services don't give a shit about boxing and put it in the hands of one promotional entity. And there are so many good fighters out there right now. I mean, I think the Ring City guys have the right idea on NBC Sportsnet with this new series, except you're putting thumbs up, but the reality is you can only buy so much for the money they're paying. And I conceptually agree with it, but if you gave me a budget that's more substantial than that and let me do Boxing After Dark, and by the way, I wouldn't have to use my own fighters. I would go to every promoter out there, let other promoters promote, stuff. If you did the best fights possible in an open marketplace where you're taking anybody's fighters and everybody's fighting everybody, yeah, they're not going to be household names before they appear, but after 2 or 3 wins in 50-50 kind of fights, they'll be household names. And there were loads of guys that proved it, that made their star power on Boxing After Dark. But guess what, man? There is no Boxing After Dark. It doesn't even exist. There is no boxing even on HBO any longer. I know. So the world has changed dramatically, Johnny.
Yes, it has. But I tell you what, going back to Gotti Ward 1, which was on Boxing After Dark back in the day, I told my girlfriend at the time that this is a Mortal Kombat mirror match. This is going to be, hell on earth. These guys are going to
put Boxing After Dark aside. Gotti Ward 1, Boxing After Dark no longer was Boxing After Dark when Gotti Ward 1 happened. And frankly, it never should have been a Boxing After Dark. That shows you the shitty decision-making that left HBO non-existent. Because Gotti was already a star. Mickey was a star. Why did they call it Boxing After Dark? I don't know. Maybe because it wasn't for a belt. I don't remember. But that wasn't a Boxing After Dark. It was in a big arena with like over 10,000 people there. And it was one of the greatest fights in the history of boxing. So, I mean, that fight, you don't have to forget about what it was. That fight was something you put into a time capsule. That fight was an all-time great fight.
Emmanuel Stewart's call. Oh my God. You only dream about fights like this. It was just such an amazing event. I was actually at the first fight, and then I saw it at home, and I loved it.
Where are you from, Johnny? Where'd you grow up?
Originally New Jersey. Yeah, I'm a big Arturo Gatti fan, so I kind of wanted to segue into that. I'm originally from Roselle Park, New Jersey, about 20 minutes roughly away from the city, for people listening, so they have a perspective of geography. And Arturo Gatti, obviously, was one of my favorite fighters. Just one of the guys that gave you everything.
I mean, he was the human highlight reel. He was the human highlight reel.
Wilson Rodriguez, man. Remember that?
Well, that was one of the greatest fights, but he fooled the referee in that fight, and he put his hand over he put his hand over he was supposed to put his hand over the good eye to see if he had any vision out of the bad eye, and he just faked the guy out. I mean, by the way, it makes you realize how fucked up health and safety is in boxing if the fucking guy looking into the ring can't figure out he's covering the bad eye instead of the good eye because he can't see out of the other eye. And he knew he only had a round left, and he was getting his ass kicked, and he was down by like 5 points. And the only thing he could have done was knock him out. What did he do? He knocked him out. So, I mean, that was really memorable stuff.
You know, he couldn't see shit in that fight, but he somehow put it together. And that's what Gotti did, man, is that guy like Arturo Gotti, he transcends, man. He just breaks in.
Yeah, but that's part of the problem with boxing today.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem with boxing today. Who transcends?
Mm-hmm.
Who transcends right now? Like, if you say to people who's the heavyweight champion, a lot of people still think it's Mike Tyson or Lennox Lewis. I mean, if people don't know. And yeah, I mean, I'm talking more about the domestic U.S. I mean, if you go to the UK, they know who the heavyweight champion is, and they know AJ, and they know. I mean, boxing's big there. But if you look at what boxing was here in the 1990s and what boxing is here now, it's a fucking joke. It's, I mean, it's completely diminished in its star power, its popularity, and anyone trying to convince you otherwise is largely full of shit.
I agree. You know, you're a man that wears many hats. You're a big sports fan. You know, I know.
Yeah, none of my hats fit very well right now, and they're all fucking like everything I'm working on seems to be depressing. I mean, you know, I've been really involved in trying to advance women's boxing. It still needs a champion here. I've worked really hard on a fight card that just got canceled out of considerations with the COVID rising and created some issues. And you know, right now we have a situation where a lot of the major female fighters, Claressa Shields, Amanda Serrano, others are waiting to see where their next fight's going to be and when. So that's been discouraging. I have 2 minor league baseball teams, Richmond Flying Squirrels, Montgomery Biscuits, 2 AA teams. I don't even know who my affiliate's going to be in the major leagues. I don't even, there's going to be a contraction. Baseball hasn't formally told the minor league teams they're contracting. I'm now feeling about baseball a lot of the ways I feel about boxing, and I'll leave it at that. But anyone who knows me knows what I mean. And it's a rough time right now. And, COVID's not helping anything. And, to a large extent, COVID's not helping anything, but people's true colors also come out during times like this. And sometimes you're very pleasantly surprised that it's good news, but a lot of the time it's just like, oh, fuck.
I've said from day one to my wife that, for me, it's like I said, it will show and expose true colors and characteristics of people, like a boxing match, what you see a fighter do in the ring. They'll show their true characteristics. Are they a quitter? Are they a punk? Are they a bitch? Like, what is it? And then everything that's going on in this world right now, dude, and I totally relate with you, is that you have to be creative. You have to really show your true colors to come up with, like you're doing, with things with your fighters and new opportunities for your fighters, because I know how important fighters are.
Yeah, but you know what? You can try your hardest, but you're still limited. Like, I worked 4 months on trying to do something, an event that would have been, an all-women's card, that literally on the day that the press release was coming out, it became clear we couldn't get the licenses necessary to do it in time. So, you sit there and all your best intentions and your hardest work and circumstances out of your control right now are playing a big part. And I think that's true of so many people's lives right now. Like, I'm not sitting here crying for myself, though it's been a rough time, but because a lot of people have it worse than I do. But, it's just not a great period. And it's not a great period for boxing in a general sense.
You mentioned women's boxing quite a bit, and I know you're a huge supporter of it. And, I'd love to see more, female fights headlining. And
there is no platform for women right now.
Yeah.
ESPN has 1 female fighter fighting in all those fights. Bob Arum is not really in the women's boxing business. Top Rank, ESPN, they're in the Michaela Mayer business. Bob made a deal with Michaela. They've honored their deal and done a good job. And he's in the Michaela Mayer business. Nobody else. Showtime was in the women's boxing business for a while. They sort of limited it then. It was almost only Claressa only. And now it looks like Claressa's looking for a new home. PBC doesn't do women's boxing. Go through the list. Eddie has women fighters in the UK and Ireland. He's doing his thing over in the UK, but there really isn't there is no regular platform for women's boxing right now. There's no series dedicated to developing women fighters. There's no series dedicated to championship level women fighters. And it's frustrating for me as someone that cares about it and has worked real hard in it. It's much more frustrating for the women. Amanda Serrano shouldn't be searching for where her next fight's going to be and having difficulty. Claressa Shields, three gold medals, one of the best ever, shouldn't be out there searching and wondering where her next fight is. Neither should Raquel Miller or Hannah Gabriels or Alicia Napoleon or Heather Hardy or Mary McGee or Kaylee Reese or Christina Leonardou. I can go through lists and lists and lists, or Melissa St. Ville or Ronica Jeffrey or Helen Joseph. There's loads and loads and loads of women. Tiara Brown is a superstar as a human being and as a fighter, and I can't find a regular platform to keep her busy. She's been a full-time police officer now. She's really wants to turn her attention more to her boxing career. There's no platform. There's no regularity. There's no champion for women. And by the way, when the budgets get tough, who gets fucked first, right? Women. Okay, well, women's boxing is not as important to us. But then you have people that are already single mothers who are world champions that can't put food on the plate for their Heather Hardy, who's a well-known figure in combat sports, can't earn a living. I mean, Amanda Serrano, 7-division world champion, Hall of Famer, just turned 30, prime of her career. She has no idea what date or where her next fight is. Not acceptable.
No, not at all. Heather Hardy too, a tough fighter. I mean, she also did MMA.
Heather is like the Mickey Ward of boxing, like the female Mickey Ward. She's the female Mickey Ward, and she's, I mean, even in that MMA fight where there's all those pictures, I don't know if you saw them, or her looking like a mask of blood. I mean, she was beaten to a bloody pulp. She never went down. I mean, that girl is just, that girl's like a Mickey Ward kind of warrior spirit in the ring.
That's really the best way to put her.
Those kind of women, and the best pound for pound women like Claressa and Amanda and Hannah, and women like they shouldn't be begging for opportunities. There has to be a platform or a champion for women's boxing in North America or the United States. Someone's got to emerge.
You gotta, Rosie Perez is like the first lady of boxing, in my opinion. And I know the two of you are friends. You guys got to team up and, put that together to give a good push for the women's boxing movement, man.
I mean, that's actually not a bad idea, and it's not something that hasn't occurred to me. No, but at this point, dude, I'll be honest with you, John, I'm desperate too, bro. So look, Rosie, I love Rosie. She's my friend. Rosie's busy, man. Rosie's got a lot of stuff going on, and she's a social activist, and she's very active in that, and she's got a lot of projects. And her and her husband are dear friends of mine, man. Like Eric Hayes and her are good friends of mine. And believe me, I'm going to reach out to my friends now who are producers, who are talent and celebrities, because the women need a push and they need some help. And look, Rosie's an altruistic woman. One of the reasons why I love her so much, but that's not a stupid suggestion, but I thought about that in the past also, or there are ideas, there's stuff that could be out there,
of course. And you got to, like you said, reach out to your friends, which we all been doing, because, I'm a musician by trade, a professional musician, a drummer, guitar player, and like you said, we all took hits in our industry and stuff like that. And it's funny because, like, Rosie just recently did a movie with Eric Roberts, who I had on my show a couple times, good buddy of mine, great actor. And she really knows her boxing, man. It's so impressive.
She's a real fan. She loves it, and she likes the fight scene. She likes fight people. Rosie's just good people, man. Her and her husband are really good people.
Absolutely. So we're talking about movies. We'll segue into this. Rocky Balboa. Playing
I
yourself.
actually think, not to do the self slap on the shoulder, but I actually thought I was pretty good. Honestly, I thought I was pretty good. Look, it was a great experience. I'm glad Sly gave me that opportunity. I'm grateful to him for that. But it was a great experience, and I met a lot of good people, and I got to be part of a franchise that, in my mind, is as historic as any franchise in the history of movies. So I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity and I was in that film.
Yeah, man, a great one too. One of my favorites, and it was a surprise to me when I saw it how good it really was. Because a lot of people.
You know
had
what? It was a
movies
good
survive,
film.
yeah.
It was a good film, John. It wasn't the most boxing centric of the Rocky films,
No,
but it was a great film about father and son. Like, it was a great film from the standpoint of human relationships. And that always was a big part of the Rocky movies, but they never really concentrated on Rocky and his kids so much.
very true.
But this was an opportunity. And by the way, the great Milo Ventimiglia, played
His son, yeah.
from This Is Us, played Rocky's son in that.
Hmm.
And good guy too, by the way. I haven't seen him in years, but he was a really good kid. But that was it was a good film, and I liked it as a project and as a film, and I liked it as a life experience, and that'll always be a good memory for me.
I thought that Tarver was really great in it too. Everyone was great in it. It was
No,
very
Tarver
believable.
was awesome, man, and
Yeah.
Tony was really good in it. It was a really good film, and my old friend Burt Young, who was a dear friend of mine. I used to, I had my own trailer, but it was like tiny, and Burt used to come by and think it was pathetic. So he made me a set of keys to his trailer, which was like pretty big, pretty huge. And I spent a lot of time with Burt back then, and great guy.
That's incredible, man. Yeah, tremendous actor. One of my favorite roles he did too was in the Pope of Greenwich Village. He was, as a mob boss, he was fantastic. He also appeared on The Sopranos. And when you were at HBO, I mean, look at the shows that were going on: Boxing After Dark, Sex and the City, Sopranos.
Well, what's funny? Before I was full-time boxing, my first couple of years at HBO, I was the lawyer for East Coast original programming, and I worked on, I did legal work on The Sopranos, Sex and the City, Deadwood. I mean, there was a lot of. I mean, look, HBO was like a snowball rolling down the mountain of snow that just keeps getting bigger. Back then, I mean, we were at it was the heyday of HBO programming and the heyday of HBO boxing, and it was just a fun decade to be at HBO. And I enjoyed our conversation. So call Sean in my office. I'll be happy to join you again. Do well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, brother. Yep.